Our relationship with animals usually follows a clear hierarchy, humans at the top, animals below, often as pets or food, but what if the roles were reversed, and we became the prey? Animal Human is a manga that explores this horrifying idea to its fullest, depicting humans being hunted, captured, and devoured by animals that think, that reason, just like we do. At its core, the story examines the tense, brutal dynamic between predator and prey, a theme that only deepens, that becomes more complex, as the chapters progress, yet its beginning is deceptively simple. After a devastating car accident, an injured man lies helplessly on the ground. Through his fading consciousness he hears footsteps approaching, and weakly murmurs his daughter's name, believing that someone has come to rescue them. A moment later, he suddenly wakes up in an unfamiliar bed, confused and disoriented. He struggles to understand where he is. His head throbs with pain as he tries to recall the events that led to the crash. In his mind, he remembers the moment when something that looked like an animal suddenly appeared on the road. The memory hits him all at once, and he jolts upright in panic. His eyes widen as he realizes his daughter, Chica, is nowhere in sight. Fragments of the accident flash through his mind, including the image of her sitting beside him in the passenger seat just before everything went dark. Desperate to find her, he tries to stand, but his weakened body gives out and he falls to the floor, still calling out her name, demanding to know where she is. At that moment, the door slowly opens. The man looks up, and what he sees leaves him completely stunned. A strange figure walks into the room with the head of a pig. The creature behaves calmly and politely bows, asking if the man slept well. The injured man can barely process what he is seeing and wonders if this is some kind of strange costume or prank. Kneeling on the floor, he explains that his memory is blurry because of the accident, but he clearly remembers that his daughter was with him. With growing desperation, he begs the strange figure to tell him where she is. The pig-headed figure calmly explains that the man and his daughter were indeed involved in a serious accident, and that he struck his head during the crash. However, the creature reassures him that Chica is safe and only suffered minor scratches. Hearing this instantly fills the man with relief. He quickly asks if he can see his daughter right away. The pigman smiles politely and tells him that of course he can. Soon after, the scene shifts outside to an enormous estate. The pig explains that breakfast has already been prepared, and that Chica is waiting there. With no other option, the man follows the pig-headed guide through a long and unsettling hallway. As they walk, he notices the walls are covered with strange portraits of animals. The building itself feels incredibly old and massive, but the paintings make him uncomfortable. To him, the decorations seem oddly disturbing and in poor taste. Unable to ignore it any longer, he finally asks about the pigman's appearance, and wonders if this place is some kind of themed hotel where everyone wears animal costumes. The pig laughs at the idea, clearly amused by the suggestion. Soon they arrive in front of a pair of large doors. Before opening them, the pig calmly warns that what he is about to see might completely shock him. When the doors open, the man is greeted by a deeply unsettling sight. A large dining table stretches across the room, surrounded by silent figures with animal heads. The strange guests stare directly at him. From every seat around the table, more people wearing bizarre animal masks watch him in silence. The situation feels surreal and terrifying. Then, suddenly, a small voice calls out happily for her father. Chica runs toward him and throws herself into his arms. Overjoyed, he hugs her tightly. She casually explains that she was playing with the animals while he was asleep. While the father and daughter reunite, some of the animal-headed guests quietly observe him as if evaluating something. A goat and a ram study him carefully, commenting on his physical condition. One remarks that he appears healthy, while a cat complains that he smells strongly of cigarettes. Trying to remain polite, the man thanks everyone for helping him and his daughter after the accident. However, the dog seated nearby wonders aloud whether the man has enough stamina to entertain them properly. Before the man can react, a large boar suddenly grabs him from behind and begins sniffing his collar. Leaning closer, the boar comments that the two of them share a similar scent. He explains that he could tell immediately that the man and the child were related simply by smell. According to him, the daughter carries a sweet scent, while the father smells far more bitter. At the head of the table sits a deer who clearly holds authority over the group. The deer sternly scolds the boar for behaving inappropriately toward their guest. The boar laughs and casually apologizes for his strange behavior. Then the deer calmly invites the man to sit down at the table as their honored guest. The man has not eaten since before the accident, and is extremely hungry. He quickly begins eating the meal placed in front of him. The dish resembles a strange but elegant meatloaf. The deer appears pleased that he enjoys the estate's finest cuisine. Embarrassed by his eagerness, the man apologizes and admits that he was simply starving. Still, he compliments the taste and says the food is surprisingly delicious. Their host explains that offering good food is the best form of hospitality they can provide. as the meal continues, the man even offers a small portion to Chica, guessing that the meat might be pork. While he continues eating and drinking wine, the other animal-headed guests watch him closely with clear amusement. The cow remarks that he eats impressively, while the cat agrees that his appetite suggests strong health. Unaware of the strange expressions around him, the man continues enjoying the meal. Once the dinner ends, he politely thanks everyone again for their kindness. Then he asks if someone could help him find transportation, because he wants to take his daughter to a doctor just to make sure she is truly unharmed. The moment he mentions a doctor, the entire room suddenly becomes silent. Every animal-headed figure slowly turns their gaze toward him with dark expressions. The man begins to feel uneasy, wondering if he said something wrong. The deer calmly responds that seeing a doctor is certainly a reasonable idea. However, before leaving, he suggests that their guest should first take a short tour of their proud farm. The proposal confuses the man, but before he can object, Chica excitedly asks her father to stay a little longer so she can keep playing. The deer assures him that he will enjoy the tour, and with hesitation, the man agrees. As they begin walking through the estate, the man asks if they could simply call a taxi instead. The pig apologizes and explains that there is no cell service in this remote area, so contacting anyone outside is impossible. During the walk, Chica curiously asks the pig how old he is. When he replies that he is 5 years old, she becomes excited because they are the same age and thinks they can be friends. Her father gently tells her not to bother the pig too much, though he still remarks that the pig's ears look surprisingly realistic. Eventually, their guide struggles to open a large metal door. With effort, the heavy door slowly slides open. What waits on the other side is a horrifying scene. Inside the building is a massive barn filled with human beings locked inside filthy cages. The people inside look weak, malnourished, and terrified. Their bodies appear thin and exhausted, and their eyes are filled with fear as they stare toward the entrance. The small pig happily announces that it is feeding time. Immediately, the man watches in shock as the caged humans scramble desperately toward a feeding tube. A thick, disgusting slop pours down, and the prisoners fight each other violently just to get a mouthful. The pig casually explains that this farm currently manages around 100 humans that are bred and raised here. According to him, the shed they are currently viewing holds the lowest-ranked humans. He comments that although they are extremely dirty, he personally finds them rather cute. He even admits that his favorite ones are those who can no longer speak. Holding his daughter tightly in his arms, the horrified father finally demands to know what kind of sick joke this is. It becomes clear to him that these creatures are treating humans exactly like livestock. The pig calmly reveals that they already conducted a full examination on the man. Based on his age and muscle condition, the pig explains that he will produce excellent meat. Seeing the man's horrified expression only makes the pig smile more. He calmly states that most humans react the same way at first. Then he encourages the man to think logically. According to the pig, their goal is simply to produce safe and high-quality meat through strict management and quality control. The horrifying explanation becomes too much for the man to handle, and he suddenly vomits onto the floor. The pig sighs and grabs a cattle prod, muttering that the situation is unfortunate. Then the pig reveals the terrible truth about the meal the man just ate. The father's eyes widen in absolute horror. The pig explains that both of them will remain in quarantine for several weeks. If they are confirmed to be disease-free, they will eventually be transferred to one of the human sheds. The pig's shadow stretches across the floor as he leads them toward a small cramped cell and tells them to endure the situation for now. Once the door slams shut, the man touches his lips, remembering the taste of the meal he just swallowed. Now trapped in darkness, he finally accepts the horrifying truth. Those figures were never costumes. They were real monsters. And he and his daughter were not brought here to live, they were brought here to be eaten. Chica begins to cry uncontrollably, blaming herself for everything. Through her sobs, she says that it was her fault because she insisted on playing longer before they left. Hearing those words shakes the man out of his despair. In that moment, he remembers the promise he once made to his late wife, the promise that he would always protect their daughter no matter what happened. Far away from the cell, the scene shifts to a large open field. The small pig stands before a group gathered on a raised platform and announces that the time has come. Standing among them is the deer known as Sir Ernest. With a calm and composed expression, he slowly cleans his shotgun while asking one of his subordinates whether everything is proceeding according to plan. The pig confirms that everything is exactly as expected. He proudly reports that he frightened the humans enough, and more importantly, deliberately left the door of their cell unlocked. Satisfied with the report, Sir Ernest rises and addresses the other animals around him. He announces that the long-awaited hunt is about to begin. At his command, the armed group of predators prepares themselves and moves out across the fields, eager to begin their brutal game. Meanwhile, Deep within the wilderness, the man runs desperately across the land while holding Chica tightly in his arms. Every step is filled with panic as he pushes through thick trees and dense bushes. In his mind, he believes that if they can just reach the wrecked car again, they might still have a chance to call for help. As he runs, the terrifying scenes he witnessed keep replaying in his head. He knows that if he survives, he must return to town and warn everyone about the horrors hidden in this place. Suddenly, a voice calls out from nearby. The man turns and sees a young boy waving at him from between the trees. The boy asks if he is all right. Filled with sudden hope, the man rushes toward him and urgently begs for help, explaining that dangerous animal-headed monsters are chasing them. However, the man suddenly stops when he notices something strange. Around the boy's neck is a leather collar. Before he can understand what it means, the boy suddenly lunges forward and attacks him. The child snarls and barks like a wild animal, clawing and biting as if he were a dog. Moments later, a hunter with the head of a dog appears from the forest. He praises the boy for successfully locating the fleeing humans. The father desperately shouts at the child to stop, begging him to let go. The boy beams with pride as he receives praise from his master. Without warning, the hunter casually raises his shotgun and fires. The blast instantly kills the boy. The hunter mutters with annoyance that he accidentally shot his John, referring to the human servant he was using. After that brief complaint, he abandons the other chained humans nearby and immediately continues the chase. Terrified, the man runs again with all the strength he has left. His mind struggles to process the twisted scene he just witnessed. But in his desperate sprint, he suddenly loses his footing. He falls down a rocky slope and smashes his head against the jagged stones below. Dazed and bleeding heavily, he collapses near a flowing stream. Chica kneels beside him, calling his name in fear. Realizing that his injuries are too severe for him to continue running, the man gathers what strength he has left and tells her to listen carefully. He points toward the nearby river and explains that she must follow the water downstream. Eventually, she will reach people who can help her. Chica begins crying harder, shaking her head as she refuses. She insists that she cannot do it alone and refuses to leave her father behind. Tears run down his face as he shouts at her with all the strength he has left. He begs her to go and save herself, knowing that this is the only chance she has. Just then, the boar hunter appears nearby while carrying a large bear trap. At the same time, another hunter quietly waits near the riverbank. A cat-like hunter observes the situation and comments that if the humans cross the river, their scent will become harder to track. The boar lowers his head and sniffs the air carefully. He follows the scent until he reaches the edge of the water where the injured father lies. The other hunter asks what they should do next. The man, realizing there is no escape left, pretends to surrender. He claims that he hates the cold water and will not attempt to run anymore. A small spark of hope appears in his eyes as he waits. But the boar leans closer with a cruel smile and asks if the man truly believed that he would be spared. The man's brief hope instantly turns back into terror. The boar grabs him by the throat and lifts him into the air while praising the father's emotional sacrifice for his child. He growls that he could smell the man's blood from far away. The father realizes that death is now unavoidable. For a brief moment, the boar hesitates, remembering that Sir Ernest forbids eating humans before the official feast. But the temptation overwhelms him. He decides that he will simply apologize afterward. With a brutal crunch, the boar bites into the man's ear. The father screams in agony while the monster comments on how delicious it tastes. Just as the boar prepares to bite again, a voice suddenly orders him to stop. From the shadows, the barrel of a shotgun appears. A loud blast echoes through the forest, and the powerful shot sends the boar flying backward. His arm is completely blown off, leaving him screaming in shock and pain. Sir Ernest calmly steps out from the trees, his shotgun still smoking. His eyes glow with a strange intensity as he places the weapon against the boar's head and calls him nothing more than an animal. The wounded boar trembles and desperately tries to apologize for losing control. Ernest then looks down at the injured man and angrily demands to know who gave the boar permission to eat a human alive. He condemns the act as cruel and unacceptable. Turning back to the terrified boar, Ernest shouts that life must always be respected. The boar whimpers and promises that he will never repeat such behavior. Ernest explains calmly that if they treat humans like worthless trash, they will lose the values that separate them from true beasts. Afterward, Ernest orders the other hunters to leave the area. Once they are gone, he approaches the wounded man. His voice becomes surprisingly gentle as he mentions that the man is bleeding badly and he wants to check the wound. He even apologizes, claiming that this situation should never have happened. He hands the man a cloth to press against the injury. The father stares up at him in confusion. For a moment, he wonders if this strange creature might actually be trying to help him. Desperate, he begs Ernest to save his daughter. Ernest calmly reassures him that everything will be all right and that he has nothing to fear. At that exact moment, another hunter emerges from the river. the large bear-like creature carries Chica over his shoulder. Her body hangs limp and motionless. The father freezes as he sees his daughter unconscious in the monster's grasp. A scream filled with pure horror erupts from his throat, echoing through the forest, and his world completely collapses. The scene then shifts to a kitchen where animal-headed chefs are busy preparing food with expert precision. Various cuts of meat are sliced, seasoned, and arranged carefully. A narrator calmly explains different methods used to cook human meat, describing how certain parts are roasted slowly while others are prepared lightly to maintain a tender texture. The explanation continues, describing how blood can be used to make sausages, and how internal organs are prepared into traditional dishes. Even the bones and fat are not wasted, as they are boiled with vegetables to produce a rich broth. Smaller pieces of meat are carefully turned into elegant spreads. Elsewhere in the estate, animal waiters dressed in chef uniforms prepare a grand dining table for another feast. The creatures reassure their unfortunate guest that he has nothing to fear and promise that his life will not be wasted. Sir Ernest calmly explains that the man will become their flesh and blood, living on through those who consume him. Then the horrifying main course is revealed. The man's severed head is placed inside a silver bowl and decorated with flowers as if it were a ceremonial dish. Around the table, the animal guests happily enjoy the feast. Even the injured boar participates while eating pieces of meat. The guests raise their glasses and praise Ernest for his creativity in hunting both a parent and a child. They celebrate the night's hunt as a great success. During the celebration, the pig announces that 3 new humans have just arrived at the estate. The message excites the hunters because it means the next hunt will begin soon. The final image reveals the full, disturbing feast. The father's dismembered body has been arranged as part of the meal itself, serving as the centerpiece for the grotesque banquet prepared from his own flesh. The story shifts to a quiet countryside under a bright sky. A wooden cart slowly moves along the dirt road toward a distant town. 2 animal workers push the heavy cart forward. One of them, a badger named Doug, happily comments on how refreshing it feels to be outside in the open air. His partner, a lynx named Nero, clearly does not share the same enthusiasm. He grumbles that being outside is only slightly better than cleaning the dirty cages back at the farm. As they continue pushing the cart, Nero complains that it feels heavier with every step. He shouts at Doug for not pulling properly, while Doug is distracted watching a small bug crawling along the path. Doug casually replies that Nero should enjoy the fresh air while they can, since they rarely leave the farm. Nero, however, only wants to finish the task quickly and return. Doug happily says he wishes every day could be spent outside like this, but Nero angrily mutters about the disturbing hobbies of the wealthy nobles they work for. As the two continue arguing, the contents of the cart become visible. Inside is a cramped metal cage filled with frightened and starving humans. Their thin bodies and terrified expressions show how badly they have been treated. Doug speaks about the situation as if it were completely normal. He calls human hunting a respected tradition among the elite and admits that one day he hopes to join such a hunt himself. While he talks, one of the humans suddenly reaches an arm through the bars of the cage. Nero immediately slaps the hand away and angrily orders the prisoner to keep their hands inside. A young girl inside the cage suddenly grabs Nero's arm through the bars. She clings tightly while staring at him with desperate eyes. Begging for help, she pleads with him to release her from the cage. Nero freezes for a moment, surprised by the sudden contact. Doug quickly walks over to see what is happening, but Nero dismisses it and tells the girl to stop reaching out before she gets hurt. At that moment, the two workers notice a smoke signal rising in the distance. Doug immediately recognizes the sign and announces that it is time to begin. The cage doors are opened, and the frightened humans are released into the open fields. The prisoners run as fast as they can, desperately trying to escape. Doug casually comments that their efforts are pointless anyway. Within moments, the hunt begins. A group of animal predators quickly spreads out across the land, chasing the terrified humans through the grass and forests. The pursuit is swift and merciless. One by one, the humans are caught and killed by the hunters. Soon the once peaceful field is covered with bodies. The predators stand proudly over their kills, satisfied with the success of the hunt. After the violence ends, Doug asks Nero if he wants to go get something to eat. Nero hesitates but eventually agrees that it might help him relax. The scene shifts to a busy pub filled with animal patrons. The room is loud with conversation and laughter as everyone drinks and celebrates. The walls of the bar are decorated with disturbing trophies, including mounted human heads. Nero and Doug take seats at a table while Doug happily orders drinks. He cheerfully declares that nothing feels better than a cold drink after a long day of work. Doug congratulates Nero for choosing such energetic prey for the hunt earlier. According to him, the nobles who organized the event were extremely pleased. However, Doug soon notices that Nero seems unusually quiet. He points out that his friend has been acting distant lately and asks what is bothering him. Nero tries to avoid the topic, but Doug refuses to let it go. He jokingly claims that he will keep giving Nero drinks until he finally reveals what is on his mind. Soon their food arrives at the table. The dish placed before them is a cooked human leg prepared in an elaborate style. Doug eagerly begins eating and praises the rich flavor of the meat. He asks Nero if he feels proud eating something that came from the farm they helped manage. Nero can only stare at the plate in silence. The memory of the desperate humans inside the cage flashes through his mind, along with the image of the young girl begging for help. Suddenly, the meal in front of him feels completely wrong. Doug notices that Nero is not touching his food and asks if something is wrong before the meal gets cold. Without warning, Nero feels nauseous. He rushes to the bathroom and vomits violently into the sink. While trying to calm himself, he repeats the thought that it is just meat. Even so, the feeling of guilt continues to grow inside him. Later, as he walks home, he still cannot shake the terrible feeling lingering in his mind. The following day, a group of young animal students arrives at the farm for an educational visit. The children excitedly gather around the cages, eager to see the humans locked inside. Some of them shout and bang on the bars to get the prisoners' attention, while the frightened humans retreat deeper into their cages. Sir Ernest arrives and calmly instructs the children to observe quietly. He explains that if they remain calm and patient, the humans will eventually grow curious and look back at them. Nero silently watches as the children follow the instructions. Just as Ernest predicted, the humans slowly begin looking toward the group. A donkey-like teacher introduces himself to Nero and thanks him for guiding the tour. Nero leads the group to another section of the farm where overweight humans are kept. He explains that these individuals are raised specifically because their fatty meat is ideal for foods such as hamburgers and sausages. Suddenly, one of the caged humans lunges violently at the bars. The sudden movement frightens one of the young students. Nero uses the moment as a lesson, explaining that humans can be dangerous if approached carelessly, so it is always safest to maintain distance. Later, while Nero is cleaning part of the facility, Sir Ernest approaches him. Ernest casually comments that Nero seems to handle children very well and asks whether he likes them. Nero does not answer immediately, but Ernest continues speaking. He explains that in their small community, children are extremely valuable because they bring happiness to everyone around them. Ernest then tells Nero that the children look up to him as well. Working on the farm is something he should take pride in. Nero feels strangely surprised by how relaxed and friendly Ernest seems. At the same time, an odd sense of familiarity begins to grow in his mind, as if he has met Ernest before. To conclude the tour, Ernest suggests demonstrating how the farm prepares meat by butchering one of the human prisoners. Nero immediately objects, explaining that such an action normally requires official permission. Ernest simply smiles and reminds him that he is the one who grants that permission. Ernest carefully examines one of the prisoners and comments that the human appears to be an excellent specimen, young and healthy. The frightened prisoner is strapped to a table while crying and begging for help. The children observe the scene with excitement, commenting on how lively the human appears. Nero stands nearby, completely frozen with horror. The teacher praises the students for paying close attention and reminds them that the most important thing is to face reality honestly. Ernest agrees and adds that ignoring such moments would show disrespect toward life itself. He then explains that consuming life is a serious responsibility. According to him, eating humans is part of that responsibility. One curious young goat asks whether it is truly acceptable for them to eat living beings this way. Ernest praises the question and explains that respect and gratitude must always be remembered. He claims that for humans, being eaten and appreciated is the greatest happiness they can achieve. The children accept this explanation without hesitation. However, Nero feels deeply unsettled by the entire discussion. As the butcher approaches with a knife, he explains that if a human struggles too much, the meat quality will suffer. He calmly tells the terrified prisoner not to be afraid. At that moment, something begins to stir in Nero's mind. Ernest's comforting words to the prisoner echo inside his thoughts. The phrase about life not being wasted repeats again and again in his head. Suddenly, forgotten memories begin flooding back. He sees a grand dining room filled with animal-headed figures staring hungrily at someone sitting at the table. Then he remembers the frightened faces of humans trapped nearby. A portrait of a deer hanging on the wall appears in his mind, sending a cold wave of fear through him. The memories grow stronger. He remembers the hunt, the unlocked cage, and the terrifying chase across the fields. Every image centers around one figure standing above the others, the deer with the massive antlers. Another memory appears. A bear-like hunter carries the body of a young girl across his shoulder. The scene now feels painfully familiar. Finally, Nero sees a face. It is his own face from long ago, filled with fear as he faced a terrible fate. Back in the present, Ernest calmly asks whether something is wrong. At that moment, the final realization crashes down on Nero. He looks at Ernest, the predator standing before him, and understands the truth. This is the creature who once killed him. the last missing piece falls into place. Nero slowly looks down at his own paws and the fur covering his body, only now does he realize the horrifying truth. He was once human too. Memories continue flooding through Nero's mind. He remembers his daughter, Chica, and the desperate moment when he tried to protect her. The image of a blood-covered, broken paw flashes through his thoughts, followed by the terrifying figures of the animals responsible for the tragedy. In the middle of this memory, a small bear cub appears, its fur stained with blood. The cub innocently offers Nero a piece of fresh meat, explaining that it is so fresh it can even be eaten raw. Rage suddenly takes over. Nero grips his club tightly and raises it high above his head. With a furious roar, he swings the weapon down toward the deer, releasing all the anger and pain that has built inside him. But the scene abruptly shifts back to reality. Instead of chaos, the children from the farm are happily thanking Nero for guiding them during their visit. Sir Ernest also expresses his appreciation, calmly saying that the children had a wonderful experience and that he will be relying on Nero again in the future. Nero stands there silently, watching them walk away while confusion fills his mind. Left alone in the dim hallway, he struggles to understand what is happening to him. As the corridor grows quiet, Sir Ernest pauses briefly in the shadows. For a moment, a single tear quietly slides down his face before he walks away. The scene then changes to a lonely house on a rainy night. Outside, a worn teddy bear is nailed to a wooden post near the entrance. Inside the house, Doug the badger prepares to eat dinner when someone suddenly knocks frantically on the door. Before he can react, the door bursts open and Nero rushes inside. Nero grabs Doug by the collar and begins shouting, demanding to know if Doug remembers ever being human. Doug is completely shocked by the sudden outburst and struggles to understand what Nero is talking about. He cautiously asks whether Nero believes he used to be human and has somehow just remembered it. Nero insists that it sounds unbelievable, but the memories feel completely real. He clearly remembers being hunted and killed on the farm while he was still human. Doug begins laughing at the idea, which only makes Nero angrier. The badger casually dismisses the story as nothing more than a wild imagination. Nero argues that they must be children of God, living beings with meaning beyond simply existing as animals. Doug shouts back that humans are nothing more than meat meant to be eaten. Doug tries to calm him down by offering to cook some stew made from fresh human meat. The suggestion only disgusts Nero further. Without another word, he stands up and storms out of the house, slamming the door behind him. As Nero runs through the dark streets under the falling rain, his mind spins with questions. He wonders whether he truly was human and how such a transformation could even be possible. While running, he suddenly hears a strange noise nearby. Startled, he trips and falls face first into the snow. A raccoon standing nearby greets him casually, claiming that his timing is perfect. The raccoon quickly runs ahead down the street while holding a cooked human skull over a small fire. With disturbing calmness, the raccoon asks Nero whether he would like to try some. Horrified by the sight, Nero covers his mouth and runs away again. The thought crosses his mind that he might be losing his sanity. Soon afterward, he sees a human child walking on a leash like a pet, barking loudly like a dog. Nero angrily tells the child to stop, but the animal owner quickly apologizes for the disturbance. Unable to tolerate the town any longer, Nero turns away and continues running. A tear slowly falls down his face as he escapes the streets and leaves the town behind. Walking alone in the darkness, he begins questioning his identity and wonders why he seems to be the only one remembering the truth. A painful memory appears in his mind. Young Chica once cried while realizing a cruel truth about the world. She had noticed that the weak were always the ones who ended up being eaten. With innocent fear, she asked her father whether she would also be eaten because she was weak. In that memory, he promised her that he would protect her and fight anyone who tried to harm her. Back in the present, Nero remembers that promise clearly. While walking through the quiet street, he notices a horse-like man standing nearby and lighting a cigarette. The stranger notices Nero and casually asks whether he has come back for another round, joking that he is always open to new experiences. The encounter reveals the harsh nature of the world they live in. These strange beings are neither truly animals nor humans. They exist in a twisted state where life revolves around consuming others. Nero slowly accepts that, in this world, he is no different from the rest of them. After a brief confrontation, Nero thanks the horse-like man, leaving him confused by the unexpected reaction. Yet something inside Nero has changed. A strange smile appears on his face as he claims that he finally understands the reason he is alive. His eyes become cold and empty. Suddenly, he grabs the horseman by the collar and pulls him closer. The horseman begins to panic, realizing that the situation is more serious than he thought. Before he can react, Nero violently slams his own skull forward, smashing it into the horseman's face and crushing it completely. Nero reveals his true intention as he shouts that he has been reborn for a single purpose. His mission is to destroy every one of these creatures. The following morning arrives peacefully in the town. A badger walks up to a house and greets his friend outside. The friend complains that Gran has not answered the door all morning, assuming he is probably unconscious after drinking too much the previous night. Inside the house, however, a very different scene is revealed. Nero sits comfortably in a chair, letting out a loud burp while looking completely satisfied. He stretches his arms and sighs deeply, commenting that he is absolutely full after the meal. Nearby, the severed head of the horseman rests inside a trash container. In a quiet village, a group of children runs excitedly down the street while laughing and shouting. Behind them, a smaller child wearing overalls struggles to keep up. Eventually, he stops on a bridge to catch his breath, complaining that the others left him behind. As he leans over the railing, something unusual catches his attention. Looking down into the water below, he suddenly notices a horrifying sight. Several lifeless bodies are floating together, trapped against a sewer grate beneath the bridge. The story then shifts to a large mansion where members of the privileged class gather to discuss the disturbing killings. The group debates who could be responsible for such brutal murders. Some believe the culprit must come from the lower classes, others briefly consider whether a human could somehow be behind the attacks, but that idea is quickly dismissed. They argue that no human could possibly defeat creatures like them. During the discussion, a large bear sitting nearby casually chews on a bone before interrupting the conversation. With an irritated tone, he asks why everyone is talking so much instead of taking action. According to him, it does not matter who the killer is. Their only responsibility is to track the culprit down and eliminate them. Several members of the group suggest taking a more careful approach, but the bear mocks their cautious attitude. He angrily declares that their claws and fangs exist for a reason. In his mind, they were born to tear enemies apart without hesitation. At that moment, a deer named Ernest enters the room. The bear continues mocking the others for behaving like timid sheep. However, Ernest quietly places something on the table. The object is revealed to be the severed and blood-covered head of one of their companions, Hoensa. The room instantly falls into shocked silence. Ernest's body trembles slightly, sweat running down his face as the others stare at the gruesome sight. Panic quickly spreads among the group as they realize the danger is far greater than they expected. Ernest attempts to calm them down, telling everyone not to panic and reminding them to place their faith in their god. Later that nihil, the bear begins walking through the dark streets. The large bear leaves the mansion while thinking about the strange conversation. He mutters to himself that calling themselves children of God feels ridiculous because, in reality, they are nothing more than beasts. From inside the mansion, Ernest quietly watches the bear through a window with a serious expression. Minu. Suddenly, he notices a faint scent of blood drifting from an abandoned building nearby. The smell immediately sparks his curiosity. A twisted smile spreads across his face as he realizes he may finally have the chance to hunt the mysterious killer. Without hesitation, he kicks the door open and steps inside. In his mind, it does not matter whether the enemy is human or one of their own. At that moment, Nero suddenly drops down from the rafters above. Before the bear can properly react, Nero drives a blade downward in a surprise attack. The bear attempts to fight back, but he quickly realizes something is wrong. A thick rope is tightly wrapped around his neck. Using his own body weight, Nero pulls the rope upward and lifts the massive creature into the air, slowly choking him. The bear desperately swings his claws while shouting that he will kill the small predator. However, Nero avoids the attacks with incredible speed. His movements appear calm and effortless, as if the danger does not concern him at all. Watching Nero move so easily, the bear finally understands that he is facing a true predator. This opponent is not acting out of simple aggression. Instead, there is a powerful force driving him forward. When the bear looks into Nero's eyes, he senses something far deeper than rage. What he sees is a relentless desire for revenge. At the same time, Nero's thoughts drift briefly to the image of his daughter, Chica. He silently encourages himself to endure just a little longer. A disturbing scene briefly flashes by, showing Nero sitting quietly in a bath. The others praise Ernest for his unusual dedication. They explain that he preserves the brains of his comrades as a way of honoring their memories. Holding the organ gently in his hands, Ernest returns to the mansion while referring to the building as their warm and welcoming home. Inside his private room, shelves filled with glass jars line the walls. Ernest places the brain inside one of the containers and begins reminiscing about the past. He remembers knowing Ugly since the earliest days when their village was first founded. Sitting quietly in the dim room, Ernest speaks to the jar as if it were still alive. He fondly recalls how his friend was always reckless and honest about his nature. While staring at the preserved brain, Ernest whispers that Ugly was the only one who truly understood the secret behind what they really are. Holding the jar close to his face, he sadly admits that now he has no one left to talk to. Suddenly, the door bursts open. Nero enters the room while holding a shotgun. Ernest calmly observes him and remarks that Nero has successfully eliminated everyone else. Consumed with rage, Nero declares that he will now kill Ernest just as mercilessly as Ernest once killed his daughter. He presses the cold barrel of the shotgun directly against the deer's head and pulls the trigger. The loud blast echoes through the room, and the top of Ernest's skull is completely destroyed. The body collapses onto the floor, surrounded by spreading blood. Nero stands silently in the room for a moment before slowly falling to his knees. A deep sigh escapes his chest as he believes the nightmare has finally ended. In his mind, he imagines reuniting with his daughter. Memories of happier times appear in his thoughts, including moments when he carried Chica on his shoulders. In a soft voice, he whispers that her father has finally defeated all the monsters. Believing his purpose is complete, Nero raises the shotgun again and places the barrel in his mouth. He quietly tells Chica not to be afraid of how he looks now. But just before he can act, a calm voice interrupts him. The voice praises his incredible strength and the impressive speed he displayed during the fight. Nero freezes in shock. Standing in the doorway is Ernest, completely unharmed. Nero looks back at the corpse lying on the floor while the real Ernest calmly explains the situation. According to him, the body that was destroyed was merely a biological doll created for experimental purposes. He compliments Nero for successfully recovering his memories. Hearing this explanation only makes Nero more furious, as he realizes that Ernest's madness goes far beyond anything he imagined. Then something unexpected happens. A small hand slowly appears from behind Ernest. A young girl steps forward into the light, wearing a simple dress. The moment Nero sees her face, the violent anger inside him disappears completely. Standing before him is the person he thought he had lost forever, his daughter, Chica. Nero stands frozen as he stares at the small girl in front of him. His eyes widen in disbelief while he whispers her name, realizing that Chica is somehow still alive. Overwhelmed with emotion, he rushes toward her and anxiously asks if she has been alright. He tries desperately to make her recognize him, tears forming in his eyes as he gently tells her that he is her father. But the girl only looks at him with a blank expression. Instead of answering, she lets out a confused sound that resembles a quiet meow. The moment shatters Nero's hope. The deer calmly watches the scene and calls the girl adorable. With cruel honesty, he reveals that she is nothing more than his beloved pet. He explains that he discovered her during one of the hunts. Because she looked too cute to eat, he decided to keep her alive instead. Nero shouts Chica's name in agony while insisting that he is her father. He repeats the truth again and again, but none of his words seem to reach her. In a strange memory fragment, Chica can be seen affectionately licking a strange pig-shaped mask, as if it were a toy. Back in the present, regret fills Nero's heart. He wishes desperately that he had saved her when he still had the chance. Falling to his knees, he apologizes while admitting that simply knowing she is alive is already enough for him. He claims he will not ask for anything more. All he truly wants is for her to smile and live happily. The deer responds with a quiet grin. He calmly says that this time, Nero will not have to be alone. A new determination rises within Nero. The lynx suddenly charges forward with powerful steps, letting out a fierce roar. He declares that he will defeat every last one of the monsters responsible for this nightmare. At that exact moment, a faint memory begins to awaken within Chica's mind. Looking toward him, she quietly whispers a single word. Daddy. Before Nero can react, the deer suddenly drives his antlers forward and impales him. The deer notices with amusement that the girl managed to remember him at the final moment. Even as life begins to fade from his body, Nero feels grateful. With his remaining strength, he clings tightly to the deer and promises through clenched teeth that he will defeat all the bad people threatening his daughter. Chica watches the scene in horror. Memories of her true family life begin rushing back into her mind. Tears run down her face as she finally remembers the father she once loved. She softly calls out to him, but it is too late. Her eyes slowly shift toward the deer standing nearby, and in his arms rests the lifeless body of her father after he has already begun eating him. The horrifying moment continues as the deer consumes the remains without hesitation. Later, the scene shifts to a quiet room where Chica wakes up on a couch. The deer greets her casually and attempts to comfort her after the traumatic experience, but she is clearly terrified. The deer calmly tells her that there is something important she must understand. According to him, everything began long ago with a single goat. He begins telling a strange story from the past. Long ago, the final female of a certain species existed. Humans called her Maiden. Scientists attempted to save her species by using advanced genetic engineering that allowed her to reproduce without a partner. However, they made a terrible mistake. The process required enormous amounts of energy to function. As time passed, Maiden developed a strong craving for meat. One day, she attacked her caretaker and consumed their brain. Through that event, the goat absorbed both human and animal genetic traits. She transformed into a new type of being capable of giving birth to creatures that combined both species. The deer explains that this event created the strange animal-human beings that now exist. Because of their origins, they are forced by instinct to consume humans. Confused and angry, Chica asks why he ate her father if her father was no longer human but an animal like them. The deer smiles in a disturbing way and admits that animal-human meat actually tastes much better than ordinary human meat. Another memory appears, showing him stirring up a crowd in the past. He claims that a human is responsible for various recent problems. The angry mob begins shouting that the human should be captured, killed, and eaten. Standing before them, the deer delivers a powerful speech, claiming that it is their divine right to raise humans as livestock for food. However, among the crowd, a pig quietly thinks to himself that they are nothing more than failed creations destined to be eaten. Back in the present, the deer calmly tells Chica that both humans and animals serve as nourishment for him. In his mind, only a god should possess such a privilege. As he carries her through the building, he explains that her father was a rare miracle. Very few creatures ever recover memories of their human past. According to him, Chica shares the same bloodline, which makes individuals like them especially valuable. He smiles while claiming that those who remember their past become far more delicious. Eventually, he brings her to a massive creature surrounded by piles of bones. Presenting the girl as a gift, he refers to the monster as Mommy. He proudly explains that he personally raised Chica with care, because strong emotions enrich the brain and make it taste better. Chica freezes in terror while imagining the giant creature swallowing her whole. The deer licks his thumb thoughtfully and wonders aloud what flavor she might have once she is reborn. The story then shifts to the snowy town outside, where a bell echoes through the silent streets. The scene cuts to a dark staircase leading down into a cold basement. In a flashback, the deer proudly holds up a newborn lamb-like creature that has just been born. The small hybrid still glistens with birth fluids. The lamb looks forward and softly expresses happiness about seeing Chica again. Smiling calmly, the deer realizes that the newborn has not yet remembered her previous life as a human. He gently places the small lamb into a woven basket and assures her there is no need to hurry. With a chilling expression, he says she should simply wait until the moment when she ripens perfectly. He then announces that he will return with a special cake prepared using human milk. The room becomes silent after he leaves, leaving the lamb alone beside containers filled with bloody remains. Hearing the door close, the small creature stretches out its hoof as if waiting for someone to come back. Heavy footsteps soon echo down the staircase. The lamb looks up, expecting the deer to return. A human soldier walks into the basement while casually holding the deer's severed head. The soldier reports to someone outside that there is only a child down there. He ignores the dead predator lying nearby. Outside the building, armed human troops begin storming the village. The confused animal residents stare in disbelief as soldiers suddenly open fire. The entire town becomes a battlefield. It is revealed that the village was merely one farm supplying a modern city. The story then shifts to a tall corporate building where powerful figures gather for a meeting. Some complain that the local administrator mishandled the situation, while others argue that he should be allowed to fix the mistake. One executive firmly declares that the incident represents a serious quality control failure because the livestock attempted to reproduce independently. Around the table sit wealthy humans alongside animal-like elites. The speaker warns that their food supply has been compromised. An orangutan suggests that even a small infection can destroy an entire body, so he calls for an immediate vote to eliminate the farm completely. The meeting reveals that countless farms exist around the world, all designed to raise animal-human creatures as high-quality meat for the wealthy. The attendees raise their glasses in celebration of this dark system. In their world, humans and beasts live together only to consume one another. Soon the guests begin their meal. Some of them compliment the flavor of the deer while joking that they can simply raise another one if needed. On a silver platter nearby, 2 severed heads are displayed as decorations. They belong to the father and daughter. As the guests enjoy roasted meat, a narrator calmly explains that the only true rule of this world is simple: the strong always devour the weak. Back at the farm, the peaceful village has been reduced to flames. Thick black smoke rises as soldiers shoot the fleeing residents. In the middle of the chaos, the small lamb stands frozen, unsure where to go. A soldier looks down at the creature with disgust and orders it to climb into a transport truck immediately. Loudspeakers broadcast announcements claiming the soldiers are there to protect everyone. The survivors are warned that running or hiding will only make things worse. The remaining villagers are forced into trucks and told they will be relocated to a new farm. Anyone who resists will receive no mercy. Inside one of the crowded trucks, an elderly goat notices that the small lamb's stomach is rumbling despite the horrifying situation. The lamb slowly lifts her head. With a chilling smile forming on her animal face, the reborn Chica quietly whispers a single word: she is hungry. The story reveals that farms partnered with and Pasieta operate under extremely strict management. Workers constantly inspect barns and feeding systems to ensure everything functions perfectly. The animals are raised under controlled conditions where their food, environment, and health are closely monitored. These farms are designed to reduce stress among the livestock as much as possible. By maintaining calm surroundings and consistent routines, the operators believe they can improve the overall quality of the meat. Each barn follows strict standards, ensuring every creature grows exactly according to detailed specifications. Through this system, the farms claim to produce an exceptionally refined product known as anthro meat, considered a luxury ingredient for the elite market. At a prestigious restaurant connected to this system, the head chef introduces himself as Takanaji. He explains that anthro meat is, in his opinion, the ultimate ingredient. When asked about the secret behind his cooking, he simply replies that he listens carefully to the ingredient itself. According to him, every creature expresses emotions that influence the flavor of its meat. By observing what causes joy, fear, or anxiety, he studies the psychological state of the animals he prepares. Understanding their feelings, he claims, is the key to discovering subtle flavors hidden within their experiences. Once this connection is made, the rest of the process becomes simple. His role is merely to guide the ingredient toward becoming something exquisite. This philosophy forms the foundation of restaurant and Pasieta, promising an extraordinary dining experience for the most elite guests. The scene shifts to the elegant, modern facility where the restaurant operates. Staff members greet visitors with polite professionalism as they prepare for another exclusive evening. Inside the dining hall, Chef Takanaji stands before his team, thanking the wealthy guests for attending the special dinner. One excited customer whispers that reserving a seat required booking a full year in advance, but insists the opportunity is completely worth the wait. The chef announces that tonight's menu will feature a unique full-course meal, crafted according to each guest's personal tastes. With a confident smile, he asks the audience if they are ready to experience a completely new world of cuisine. The centerpiece of the evening is soon revealed. Lying on the large dining table is a young anthro-human ram sourced directly from one of the partner farms. The guests immediately react with amazement, realizing that the entire body will serve as the platform for the meal. However, the chef hints that the true surprise has not yet been shown. He lifts a small silver bell and rings it loudly beside the decorated head resting on the table. To everyone's shock, the ram suddenly wakes up and looks around in confusion, eyes widening as he notices the exposed cavity in his own chest. Takanaji calmly explains the situation. Although the head has been separated, advanced machines and artificial hearts are keeping the body alive. He gestures toward the open chest and invites the guests to observe the heart still beating inside. According to the chef, this ensures the ingredients remain at the peak of freshness. Holding the living head gently in his hands, he begins presenting the dishes prepared from different parts of the body. The guests applaud with fascination as he explains the menu. One arm has been prepared as a delicate carpaccio, decorated with edible flowers to preserve the aroma. The other arm has been finely minced and fried into a crispy dish. Meanwhile, the internal organs have been blended with herbs to create a rich pâté served with bread. The diners eagerly taste each dish, discussing the flavors among themselves. Some enjoy a thick soup created by simmering meat from the leg directly on the bone. As the ram slowly realizes what is happening, fear fills his eyes. He tries to beg the diners to stop while staring helplessly at another dish prepared from his ribs. The chef, however, calmly suggests that the ram entertain the table by sharing details about his life. The guests enthusiastically begin asking questions. While continuing to eat, they ask about how he was raised, what kind of life he lived, his favorite foods, his family, and the friends he once had. Tears roll down the ram's face as he desperately pleads for help. The diners respond jokingly that they cannot hear him clearly. Surrounded by smiling faces, he realizes the horrifying truth: they will continue enjoying the meal regardless of his suffering. Chef Takanaji then suggests that the guests might be thirsty after so much conversation. To enhance the flavor further, he inserts a syringe into the exposed heart and injects a small amount of vintage cognac. The alcohol flows through the body as the machines keep the blood circulating. Soon the ram begins to feel dizzy as the substance spreads through his system, his pain clouded by a strange, intoxicated confusion. The chef gently strokes the ram's head and encourages him to speak again. In his dazed state, the ram eventually mutters a faint word of thanks, manipulated by the overwhelming sensations. The diners then force him to taste a small portion of the dishes created from his own body. Chef Takanaji raises a glass and suggests a drink to cleanse the palate before the next course. Around him, the guests continue their meal while the broken creature remains on the table as the evening's centerpiece. Later that night, the chef walks quietly along the waterfront, reflecting on the evening's success. Back in the kitchen, he rubs his aching arm after the exhausting work. A deep voice suddenly calls from the doorway. Turning around, he sees a large pig dressed in a formal suit. The visitor introduces himself as Genso, the Minister of Food and Agriculture. The minister praises the flawless dinner service, revealing that he watched the entire event from behind the scenes. Takanaji humbly replies that he simply listens carefully to the voice of his ingredients. Genso asks whether the chef usually stays behind alone after closing. Takanaji explains that he enjoys replaying each dish in his mind, reflecting on how it could be improved. Lighting a cigar, the minister mentions that a rare request has arrived for the next exclusive dinner event. A very important guest has made a special demand. He slowly exhales a cloud of smoke before revealing the request. The guest wishes to experience a dish prepared from a wild-caught, natural human. A drop of sweat runs down the chef's face. Instead of fear, however, a smile appears as he admits that such a challenge makes his excitement grow even stronger. Later that night, Chef Takanaji drives his son home after work. During the ride, the boy suddenly asks if his father is even paying attention. With excitement in his voice, the teenager shares that he has made the starting lineup on his team. A proud smile spreads across Takanaji's face. He warmly promises that he will come watch the game and cheer for him, reassuring the boy that this is an important moment. Yet, as he continues driving, his thoughts drift back to the restaurant. The memory of the minister's earlier request echoes in his mind. The idea of preparing a wild-caught human still feels shocking. Earlier, he had tried to refuse, nervously explaining that his skills were built entirely around anthro meat. But the minister had dismissed his hesitation, insisting that cooking natural human meat represents the highest level a chef can reach. That statement awakened something darker within Takanaji. As the car moves quietly through the night, he makes a silent decision to accept the challenge. In his mind, this opportunity could elevate his career to unmatched heights and secure a brilliant future for his family. Sitting beside him, his son smiles innocently, unaware that his father has just chosen a path that will lead to tragedy. The story shifts back to the restaurant later that evening. The kitchen staff has been unexpectedly called in for a late-night meeting. Several young chefs gather around a table, whispering among themselves with curiosity, believing their mentor has simply conceived a new recipe or culinary idea. The younger cooks admire Takanaji deeply. They talk about how fortunate they are to learn under someone with such dedication and passion for cooking. When the head chef finally enters, however, something feels off. A moment later, one of the female chefs notices a strange smell in the air. Another staff member hears a faint hissing sound. Within seconds, panic spreads as gas fills the room. The workers begin coughing and rushing toward the door, desperately trying to escape the sealed space. Outside, a gas canister quietly releases its contents. Inside, the trapped staff pound on the door and struggle to breathe, but no one comes to help them. The following day, Chef Takanaji stands before a group of wealthy animal guests inside the restaurant. With calm professionalism, he thanks them for attending the special event. One zebra guest jokes about the strange irony, mentioning that he heard this establishment usually serves meals made from their own species. Takanaji smiles politely, explaining that the presentation for today's dish required extraordinary preparation. When the curtain is revealed, the guests stare in astonishment. Before them stands a towering display created from the bodies of the chef's former students. The diners observe the fearful expressions frozen on the victims' faces. Takanaji calmly confirms that these individuals were indeed wild-caught. He bows respectfully to the table and introduces the 13 people who have been raised and trained under his guidance in the kitchen. One curious cat guest notices a strange aroma and asks about it. The chef explains, with unsettling calm, that the scent represents the human soul itself. According to his philosophy, the soul does not reside in the chest, but within the brain. The preparation process becomes clear. The brains of the 13 victims were carefully removed and simmered overnight to create a rich bouillon. Takanaji offers the diners a small spoonful, encouraging them to savor the complexity of the thoughts and emotions that once existed within his students. As the animal guests begin tasting the dishes, Takanaji feels certain that he has reached the peak of his lifelong ambition as a chef. Yet, the atmosphere shifts when the powerful guest known as Lord Sawtooth quietly wipes his mouth with a napkin. The wolf looks thoughtful, slightly disappointed. Concerned, Takanaji nervously asks if something is unsatisfactory. Sawtooth explains that he expected something different, that it feels as though the true main course has escaped. Confused, the chef gestures toward the massive display before them, insisting the meal represents everything he has devoted his life to creating. At that exact moment, the restaurant doors suddenly open. Minister Genso enters, placing a heavy hand on the shoulder of a young boy. Takanaji immediately recognizes his son. The boy calls out with confusion, unaware of the situation unfolding. Terror spreads through Takanaji instantly. Sawtooth studies the moment carefully and realizes that the boy is the one thing the chef truly values above all else. Driven by panic, Takanaji lunges forward, shouting desperately at the guests, begging them not to touch his son. He collapses to his knees, pleading for mercy. The wolf simply smiles, gesturing for silence. Leaning close to the trembling chef, he remarks calmly that all the screaming makes it difficult to hear the ingredient's voice. With chilling composure, he reveals that despair itself is often the richest flavor. The guests rush forward in a frenzy. Before the helpless father can intervene, they tear the boy apart. Takanaji stands frozen among the devastation, staring blankly at what remains. Tears stream down his face as grief overwhelms him. Through his sorrow, he swears he will kill every one of the monsters responsible. Minister Genso simply watches with pity. He quietly remarks that Takanaji was truly a talented chef, as the man's desperate screams echo through the night. Later, near the ocean, several powerful executives gather, looking across the water. They discuss the failed attempt to replace the chef, complaining about the outcome. The pig worries about how higher authorities will react. The wolf dismisses those concerns. In his view, there can never be compromise when pursuing perfection in their culinary world. Drooling slightly with hunger, he calmly declares that everything is done in the name of the perfect dining experience. To them, humans are nothing more than meat. In a brightly lit facility, a young otter sits quietly as staff members praise him for his progress. He walks past a glass wall, waving goodbye to other creatures who look at him with envy, wishing they had been chosen instead. With respectful manners, he bows to the guard who raised him and expresses gratitude, saying he never expected to be selected with such pride. As they walk down the hallway, the otter smiles happily, believing there is no greater honor than becoming a perfect meal. However, the atmosphere suddenly changes. The guard's tone turns cold as he orders the otter into a separate room. Inside, a lifeless body lies on the floor. They complain that he is low-quality meat that never improved, no matter how much he was fed. His life ends not as an honored selection, but as something discarded without value. It becomes clear that from the moment these creatures are born, they are conditioned to believe their purpose is to become food. This system ensures they grow without fear or resistance. Those who meet the required standards are processed, while those who fail are eliminated. Through this process, anthro-human meat is carefully produced to satisfy the demands of this world. In another area, a cafeteria is filled with livestock preparing to eat. Before touching their meals, they place their hands together and offer gratitude, showing respect for the lives that allowed them to become food. A young lamb quietly chews on a processed meat patty, calmly enjoying the taste. Nearby, a dog notices and scolds him. He insists that proper gratitude must come before eating. According to him, becoming high-quality meat requires discipline, appreciation, and effort. He proudly talks about how he exercises and eats properly, warning that those who fail will be disposed of without even being used. Suddenly, his speech is cut off. Blood begins to pour from his nose. The entire room falls silent as everyone watches in shock. The dog coughs violently, collapsing as more blood spills out. Panic spreads quickly as the others realize something is terribly wrong. An announcement echoes through loudspeakers, ordering everyone to remain calm. A cleanup team is already on the way. Despite the chaos, the lamb continues eating without reacting. Even as the room empties and the body lies nearby, he finishes his meal in an orderly manner. In a security room, human guards express frustration. They complain about the loss of valuable product due to infection. Meanwhile, the remaining animals from the cafeteria are gathered and led into a large concrete pit. Confused and frightened, they wonder why they are not being taken to their usual areas. A guard stands above them and explains the situation plainly. For the sake of safety, everyone exposed must be eliminated. He thanks them for their cooperation as if it were routine. Without hesitation, the guards open fire. The pit fills with panic as the trapped creatures try to escape, but there is nowhere to go. The scene quickly turns silent. Later, in a quiet stairwell, two guards discuss the situation in hushed voices. They talk about breaking protocol and ask how many survivors were secretly taken aside. One of them, a bull-like figure, suggests that instead of wasting everything, some of the remaining meat should be used personally. He even mentions giving some to his pregnant wife. Looking down, they observe a small group of young lambs and puppies trembling in fear. The guards reason that at least they can still serve a purpose. Since machines cannot be used without leaving evidence, they decide to handle the situation themselves. The bull picks up an axe and instructs one of the young ones to lower their head. The children obey silently, shaking as they wait. However, the bull suddenly hands the weapon to his human partner and tells him to finish the task while he prepares fuel. The human hesitates, clearly uncomfortable, but the bull refuses to take the axe back. He stares at the lamb with unsettling focus, admitting that he personally likes the taste of that kind of meat. At that moment, something unexpected happens. The lamb suddenly appears in a different room, sitting upright as if waking from sleep. The surroundings are quiet. For a moment, it seems like everything before was only a dream. He looks around in confusion, trying to understand what is real. As he steps down and walks forward, the truth becomes clear. The room is covered in blood, and bodies are scattered everywhere. Whatever happened here has already ended. Despite the horrifying scene, the lamb shows no fear. Calm and unaffected, he walks out of the room without hesitation. Moving forward, he finds an opening in a fence and steps outside into the open world. Looking ahead, he quietly whispers a single thought. He is hungry. The story takes another turn when a married couple arrives in the mountains for a hiking trip. The wife suggests that they should stop near the river and rest for a while since their phones are not working and nobody would be able to rescue them if something went wrong. She complains that she cannot walk any farther, but her husband impatiently tells her to stay quiet while he tries to find the route on the map. Annoyed, the woman blames him for getting them lost in the first place. The argument quickly grows heated, and the husband angrily tells her to stop talking before marching ahead through a field. When his wife asks where he is going, he explains that he recognizes the area and believes there is a path nearby. As he crosses the field, he suddenly notices a small boy standing ahead of him. The boy asks whether they are lost. When he confirms that they are, the boy calmly offers to guide them. Relieved, the man feels as though they have finally found help. He asks if the boy lives nearby, and the boy nods before telling them to follow him. The couple has no idea that the boy is secretly hiding a machete behind his back. Meanwhile, high up in the mountains, Chica spots a rabbit and immediately chases after it. She runs after the rabbit, but it quickly escapes, leaving her empty-handed. Hungry, Chica wanders through the forest searching for food. She drinks water from a river and eventually finds some blueberries growing nearby. After eating, she continues traveling through the wilderness. Eventually, she discovers an injured wolf with something lodged deep in its back. Chica approaches the suffering animal and sits beside it. Looking at the wolf, she calmly asks whether she can eat it after it dies. The wolf can do nothing but stare back at her. Chica picks up a stone but then decides to wait. She remains seated for a long time until the wolf finally dies from its injuries. Once it stops breathing, Chica immediately begins eating it before continuing her journey through the forest, still thinking about finding more food. After traveling farther, Chica comes across a small cabin hidden among the fields. As she approaches, she notices some meat placed outside. The moment she moves closer, however, her foot triggers a trap. Instantly, she is pulled upside down into the air and left hanging from a tree. A door slowly opens. A strange man with the face of a cow steps outside carrying tools. He notices Chica dangling helplessly from the trap. Surprisingly, instead of killing her, the cow-faced man brings her inside the cabin. There, he seats Chica at a large table covered with fruits and food. Smiling warmly, the man tells her not to be shy and encourages her to eat as much as she wants. The sight of the feast makes Chica's mouth water. She immediately begins devouring the food. The cow-faced man watches happily and apologizes for the trap, explaining that travelers occasionally wander into the area by mistake. He asks Chica where she came from. Chica replies that she comes from a place filled with animals. Before Chica can explain further, the cow-faced man suddenly becomes emotional. He hugs her tightly and says that she must have gone through many hardships to get there. He assures her that she is safe now and that she can stay under his protection. The two continue eating together. Outside, the mysterious little boy quietly peeks through the cabin window. After observing them, he silently walks away. Nearby lies the captured husband from the hiking couple. The little boy approaches him without saying a word. The terrified man asks where his wife is, but the boy remains completely silent. Holding a lantern and carrying pieces of meat, he walks down into the basement. There, he places the lantern beside a cage and calls out softly, "Mom, it's dinner time." Upstairs, Chica eventually falls asleep at the dining table after eating too much. The cow-faced man gently carries her into a nearby room and lays her on a bed. He quietly tells Chica that there is plenty of food there and that she can stay forever if she wants. Wishing her sweet dreams, the cow-faced man leaves the room. Later that night, he walks through a corridor and remarks that the cold evening makes him want something to drink. When he opens another door, a horrifying scene is revealed. Inside the room are several human women who are being kept captive. Among them is the wife from the hiking couple. The moment she sees the cow-faced man enter, tears fill her eyes. She desperately begs him to stop. Ignoring her pleas, the monster calmly takes what he came for and leaves. Meanwhile, deep into the night, Chica suddenly wakes up. A strange smell drifts through the cabin. Curious, she follows the scent through the hallway until she reaches a door leading into the basement. Opening it, she slowly descends into the darkness below. There, behind iron bars, she notices a horrifying creature. It is neither fully human nor fully animal. Its body appears twisted, sickly, and horribly deformed. As Chica stares at the creature, it suddenly lunges forward. In a single instant, the monster bites down on Chica's arm. Before she can even react, one of her arms disappears completely. Thanks for reading. If you like, hit the red button and comment below for the next part.